Admiral Zextharos stood on the command bridge of the Eternal Dominion, the flagship of the Galactic Empire's most feared invasion fleet. Through the massive viewport, the blue marble of Earth hung suspended in the void like a precious gem waiting to be plucked. The sight should have filled him with satisfaction, but, instead, an uncomfortable feeling gnawed at his consciousness. "Admiral, all battle groups report ready for planetary bombardment," announced Commander Veltar, his four arms working efficiently across the tactical display. The holographic projection showed the positioning of 12,000 warships, each one capable of reducing entire continents to ash. Zextharos' tentacles twitched with anticipation. For 800 cycles, the Galactic Empire had expanded across the galaxy, conquering over 10 million worlds and subjugating countless species. Their military doctrine was simple and effective: overwhelming force followed by complete subjugation. No species had ever successfully resisted them for more than a few rotations. "Have we received any communication from the primitive inhabitants?" the Admiral asked, his voice carrying the authority that had crushed 1,000 rebellions. "Negative, Admiral. Our linguistic analysis teams have been monitoring their communication networks for several rotations. They appear to be completely unaware of our presence. Their technology is laughably primitive. They still use chemical propulsion for space travel and have barely established colonies on their nearest planetary satellite." Zextharon nodded approvingly. The intelligence reports had been thorough. Humanity, as they called themselves, had only recently developed nuclear weapons and basic spaceflight. Their most advanced military technology was centuries behind even the Empire's oldest reserve fleets. This would be nothing more than a routine pacification mission. "What is the status of their defensive capabilities?" he inquired, though he already knew the answer would be insignificant. "Minimal, Admiral. They possess no energy shields, no plasma weaponry, and no faster-than-light capabilities. Their largest military vessels are confined to their planet's oceans. We detect no orbital defense platforms or weapon satellites. Their nuclear arsenal, while capable of damaging their own planet, poses no threat to our shielded vessels." The Admiral's confidence grew. This backward species would serve well as laborers in the Empire's mining operations. Their planet's abundant water and diverse ecosystems would make excellent recreational facilities for high-ranking Imperial officers. "Initiate Standard Conquest Protocol. Begin with a demonstration of power to encourage immediate surrender," Zextharos commanded. Across the massive fleet, weapon systems powered up with an ominous hum. The Empire's standard procedure was to destroy one major population center as a show of force, then demand unconditional surrender. It had worked on every world they had encountered. The targeting systems locked onto a large landmass the humans called North America. Specifically, they aimed at a sprawling urban center that intelligence identified as New York City, apparently one of their major commercial and cultural hubs. The destruction of 8 million primitive beings would surely convince the rest of the species to submit without further resistance. "Firing solution confirmed, Admiral. Prime bombardment cannons are charged and ready. Fire." A dozen massive energy beams lanced out from the fleet, each carrying enough destructive power to vaporize mountains. The brilliant azure streams of concentrated plasma streaked toward Earth's surface, leaving trails of superheated space in their wake. But something impossible happened. As the devastating barrage approached Earth's atmosphere, it simply stopped. The energy beams hit an invisible barrier approximately 1,000 kilometers above the planet's surface and dissipated harmlessly, like raindrops striking an umbrella. Zextharos' command bridge fell silent. Every officer stared at their instruments in disbelief. The targeting computers insisted the shots had been fired correctly. The power outputs showed normal readings. Yet their most devastating weapons had accomplished nothing. "What just happened?" the Admiral demanded, his voice tight with confusion and growing concern. "Unknown, sir. All weapons function normally, but our bombardment was completely absorbed by some form of energy barrier surrounding the planet. Impossible. Our intelligence indicated no defensive capabilities. Scan for any technology we might have missed." The ship's most advanced sensors swept Earth's surface and orbital space. The results were baffling. They detected no shield generators, no massive power sources, nothing that could explain what had just occurred. "Admiral," the communications officer announced urgently, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's being broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously. Put it through." The main display flickered, and, suddenly, they were looking at a human. The creature appeared remarkably ordinary, bipedal, with pale skin and what appeared to be some kind of fabric covering its body. It sat behind a simple wooden desk in what looked like a primitive office space. When the human spoke, its voice was calm and measured, carrying an undertone of disappointed resignation. "Greetings, representatives of the Galactic Empire. My name is Dr. Sarah Chun, and I speak on behalf of the human species. We are aware of your presence and your recent attempt to attack our planet." The entire bridge crew exchanged glances. How did this primitive being know about the Galactic Empire? Their arrival had been undetected, their ships cloaked by the most advanced stealth technology in known space. The human continued speaking. "We had hoped that when we finally encountered other intelligent life in the galaxy, it would be under peaceful circumstances. Unfortunately, you have chosen to introduce yourselves through violence. This is deeply disappointing, as we have been monitoring your empire's expansion for quite some time." Admiral Zexthara felt his blood temperature drop. Monitoring their expansion? These primitives had faster-than-light communication capabilities? The intelligence reports had indicated nothing of the sort. "We understand that your species operates under a philosophy of conquest and subjugation," Dr. Chen said, her tone remaining eerily calm. "You believe that superior technology grants you the right to dominate those you perceive as weaker. This is a grave miscalculation on your part." The human paused, and, for a moment, her expression showed something that might have been pity. "You see, humanity has indeed been watching your empire's growth with great interest. We've studied your technology, your tactics, your psychology. We know about every world you've conquered, every species you've enslaved, every act of cruelty committed in the name of imperial expansion." Commander Veltar leaned close to the admiral. "Sir, this is impossible. Our intelligence networks would have detected any species with the capability to monitor our empire." But Dr. Chen wasn't finished. "What you don't understand is that we chose to appear primitive. We wanted to see what kind of civilization you truly were. We hoped that perhaps you might approach us with peaceful intentions, that you might be capable of change." The camera angle shifted slightly, showing the human clasping her hands together on the desk. "Sadly, you have proven that our hopes were misplaced. Your first instinct when encountering our species was to attempt genocide. This cannot be permitted to continue." Admiral Zexthara found his voice. "What are you saying, primitive? You cannot threaten the Galactic Empire. We have conquered 10 million worlds. Our fleet alone could reduce your entire planet to cosmic dust." The human's expression remained unchanged. "Admiral Zexthara of the Eternal Dominion, your empire's reign of terror ends today. Humanity has decided that the galaxy would be better off without your particular form of governance." The admiral's tentacles writhed with rage. "You dare threaten us? We are the masters of this galaxy. Your pathetic species hasn't even achieved interstellar travel." Dr. Chun smiled sadly. "Admiral, would you like to know the truth about human technology?" Before anyone could respond, every screen on the command bridge flickered. Suddenly, detailed schematics appeared showing the internal structure of their ship. Not just general layouts, but specific technical details that should have been impossible for any external party to obtain. Your ship's primary power core operates on contained antimatter reactions channeled through crystalline matrices. Very efficient for your level of understanding. The shield generators use rotating gravitational fields to deflect incoming energy. Quite clever, really. The schematics rotated, showing every corridor, every room, every system aboard the massive vessel. Your weapons systems are fusion plasma-based, accelerated through magnetic containment fields. The design is somewhat crude, but effective against civilizations without adequate defenses. Admiral Zexthara stared at the displays in growing horror. The level of detail was beyond anything their own intelligence services could achieve when analyzing enemy vessels. "Now," Dr. Chen continued, "let me show you what human technology actually looks like." The schematics disappeared, replaced by something that defied immediate comprehension. The structure that appeared on screen seemed to exist in more dimensions than should be mathematically possible. Energy flowed through pathways that curved through space in ways that hurt to look at directly. This is the Earth defense grid, the human explained. It exists partially in normal space and partially in what you might call folded dimensions. The barrier that stopped your bombardment is just the most basic function of this system. Commander Veltar was frantically working at his station. Admiral, our sensors cannot even properly detect what she's showing us. The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. Dr. Chen nodded as if she could hear their conversation. Your instruments are limited to understanding three-dimensional physics with some basic temporal manipulation. Human technology operates in 11 dimensions simultaneously. The Admiral felt something he had never experienced before in his 800 cycles of military service. Pure, overwhelming terror. You're lying, he whispered. This is some form of deception. No species could develop such capabilities without our knowledge. Admiral, humanity achieved faster-than-light travel over 2,000 years ago. We've been exploring the galaxy since before your empire existed. We've watched countless civilizations rise and fall. We've seen species like yours before, those who believe that power gives them the right to dominate others. The main display changed again, showing what appeared to be a vast space station unlike anything in Imperial records. It was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, and its design incorporated the same reality-bending technology they had glimpsed moments before. This is Observation Post 7, one of many facilities we've established throughout the galaxy to monitor developing civilizations. Your empire has been under constant surveillance since your first successful interstellar voyage. The camera feed returned to Dr. Chun, and her expression had hardened. We generally follow a policy of non-interference, allowing species to develop according to their own nature. Sometimes this leads to beautiful, enlightened civilizations that contribute wonderful things to the galaxy. Sometimes it leads to empires like yours. Admiral Zexthara tried to maintain his composure, but his voice betrayed his growing desperation. What do you want? We want you to leave our solar system immediately and return to your home territory. We want you to release every enslaved species under your control. We want you to dismantle your military forces and transition to a peaceful civilization focused on growth rather than conquest. Impossible. The Empire will never surrender to primitives. Dr. Chen sighed. We hoped you might say that. Suddenly, every alarm on the bridge began blaring simultaneously. Commander Veltar's forearms flew across his console as he tried to make sense of the readings. Admiral, unknown contacts appearing throughout the fleet. They're not using any propulsion system we can detect. On the tactical display, new signatures appeared around every single Imperial vessel. Ships, unlike anything in their databases, had somehow materialized within their formation without triggering any sensors. How many? The Admiral demanded. Impossible to get an accurate count, sir. They seem to be phasing in and out of normal space. Estimated numbers, over 100,000 vessels. The main viewscreen split to show exterior camera feeds. What they saw defied everything they thought they knew about space warfare. The human ships moved like living things, flowing through space in patterns that seemed to ignore basic physics. They ranged in size from small craft no larger than fighters to massive constructs that dwarfed even the Imperial flagship. But it was their design that truly unsettled the Imperial officers. The vessels appeared to be constructed from some form of liquid metal that constantly shifted and reformed itself. Weapon ports opened and closed like breathing apertures. Hull sections flowed like water while maintaining perfect structural integrity. Their technology is completely beyond our understanding, Commander Veltar reported. Our targeting computers can't get a lock on them. They exist in normal space, but also seem to extend into dimensions our sensors can't perceive. Dr. Chin's voice returned, transmitted simultaneously to every ship in the Imperial fleet. Admiral, you now see a small fraction of humanity's defensive capabilities. What you're observing is one tactical squadron of the Home Guard. If you attempt to retreat and summon reinforcements, you will discover that humanity has similar squadrons positioned near every major Imperial world. The tactical display updated, showing the positions of human vessels throughout known space. They were everywhere. Every Imperial stronghold, every conquered world, Every strategic location in the Empire was under silent observation by forces that had somehow remained completely undetected for centuries. "This is impossible," Admiral Zexthara repeated, but his words carried less conviction each time. "You have two options," Dr. Chen continued. "Option 1. Surrender immediately, begin the process of dismantling your empire, and allow humanity to guide your species toward a more enlightened path. You will retain your home systems and your autonomy, but your days of conquest are over." And Option 2? The human's expression became as cold as the void between stars. "Option 2 is that humanity implements a more permanent solution to the problem your empire represents." To demonstrate their point, one of the smaller human vessels approached an Imperial destroyer. The warship's shields were fully raised, its weapons charged and ready. The human craft, no larger than a shuttle, simply phased through the destroyer's shields as if they didn't exist. What happened next occurred so quickly that the bridge crew almost missed it. The human vessel made brief contact with the destroyer's hull, and the massive Imperial warship simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris field, nothing. One moment, there was a fully functional military vessel. The next, there was empty space. "Where did it go?" someone whispered. Dr. Chen answered as if she had heard the question. "Your destroyer has been relocated to a dimension where the fundamental forces of physics operate differently. The crew is unharmed, but will remain in temporal stasis until this situation is resolved." Admiral Zexthara stared at the empty space where the destroyer had been moments before. 800 cycles of military experience had not prepared him for this moment. His empire, the greatest force in known space, had just been revealed as children playing with toys compared to the power humanity commanded. "How?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "How did we develop such capabilities while remaining hidden? How did we achieve this level of technological advancement? How did we avoid your empire's notice for so long?" Dr. Chen leaned forward slightly. "Admiral, let me tell you the real story of humanity's development, because understanding it might help you grasp the magnitude of your mistake." The view screen changed to show what appeared to be Earth as it had existed thousands of years ago. Primitive settlements dotted the landscape, and early humans could be seen engaging in basic agricultural activities. Humanity's journey to the stars began long before your empire was even a dream. But our path was different from yours. Where your species pursued conquest, we pursued understanding. Where you sought to dominate, we sought to learn. The images shifted to show human societies developing over time. But there were anomalies, technologies that shouldn't have existed in certain time periods, architectural achievements that defied explanation. We encountered our first extraterrestrial visitors nearly 4,000 years ago. They were explorers from a species called the Architects, an ancient civilization that had transcended physical existence eons before your empire began its first territorial expansion. The display showed beings of pure energy interacting with early human civilizations, sharing knowledge and wisdom. The Architects taught us that true power comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the ability to create and protect. They showed us how to develop technology that works in harmony with natural forces rather than in opposition to them. Admiral Zexthara watched in fascination as the images showed human technology developing along completely different lines from anything the Empire had encountered. Instead of weapons and conquering fleets, humanity had focused on defensive systems and exploratory vessels. While your ancestors were learning to make spears, humanity was already studying the fundamental nature of reality itself. We learned to manipulate space and time, to harness energies that exist beyond the normal electromagnetic spectrum, to build devices that function across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. The philosophical implications hit the Admiral like a physical blow. Everything his empire had built was based on the assumption that they were the most advanced species in the galaxy. But humanity had been developing for thousands of years longer, guided by beings of near-infinite wisdom. We achieved faster-than-light travel by learning to fold space rather than pushing through it. We developed energy systems that draw power directly from the quantum foam that underlies reality. We built defense systems that can redirect entire attacks into alternate dimensions. Dr. Chen paused, allowing the magnitude of these revelations to sink in. And through it all, we watched. We observed as younger species developed, hoping that each one might choose the path of wisdom rather than the path of dominion. Your empire is not the first aggressive civilization we've encountered, Admiral, and, unfortunately, it probably won't be the last. The transmission showed flashes of other conflicts, other species that had chosen conquest over cooperation. In each case, the same pattern emerged: initial human warnings, followed by increasingly dramatic demonstrations of power, culminating in forced pacification. What happened to them? Commander Veltar asked, his voice tight with dread. Some chose wisdom and evolved into peaceful, exploratory civilizations. They now work alongside humanity to guide and protect younger species as they develop. Others chose defiance. The images showed empty star systems where thriving empires had once existed. Not destroyed, but simply relocated to dimensions where they could no longer threaten innocent civilizations. We do not believe in genocide, Admiral. Every species has the potential for growth and enlightenment. But we also cannot permit the continued suffering of innocent beings for the sake of imperial ambition. Admiral Zexthara looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were beings who had served the Empire with absolute loyalty for decades. They had believed in the righteousness of their cause, in the superiority of their civilization. Now they stood in stunned silence, their entire worldview crumbling around them. "You're asking us to surrender everything our species has built," he said. "No, Admiral. I'm asking you to surrender everything your species has built that causes suffering. The Empire's advanced medical technology, your artistic achievements, your philosophical contributions, these things can continue to flourish. It's only the military conquest and species enslavement that must end." Dr. Chen stood up from her desk, and the camera followed her movement. "Your empire controls 10 million worlds, but how many of those populations live in freedom? How many species have you uplifted through willing cooperation rather than forced subjugation? How many of your conquered territories exist to serve their inhabitants rather than to serve imperial interests?" The questions hung in the air like accusations, because everyone on the bridge knew the answers. The Empire existed to feed itself. Conquered worlds provided resources and labor to fuel further expansion. Subjugated species served as workers and soldiers for the imperial war machine. Very little of what they had built actually benefited anyone except the ruling hierarchy. "Humanity offers you a different path," Dr. Chen continued. "Retain your core territories, but release the conquered worlds. Allow enslaved species to choose their own destiny. Transform your military into an exploratory and defensive force. We will provide you with the guidance and technology needed to make this transition successful. And if we refuse?" The human woman's expression became infinitely sad. "Then, humanity will be forced to make the choice for you." As if to emphasize the point, the human vessels surrounding the Imperial fleet began to move in perfect synchronization. Their formations shifted into patterns that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, creating geometric designs that hurt to perceive directly. "Admiral," Dr. Chun said, "you have one rotation to make your decision. Consider carefully. This is not just about the fate of your empire, but about the future of every species currently under Imperial control. Choose wisely." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Eternal Dominion in absolute silence. Admiral Zexthara sat motionless in his command chair for several long moments after the transmission ended. Around him, the bridge crew maintained their positions, but their usual disciplined efficiency had been replaced by uncertainty and fear. The tactical displays still showed the human vessels maintaining their impossible formations around the Imperial fleet, a constant reminder of their newfound vulnerability. "Sir," Commander Veltar finally broke the silence, his voice carefully controlled. "What are your orders?" The Admiral stared at the main view screen, which now showed nothing but stars and the distant blue sphere of Earth. One rotation. 26 standard hours to decide the fate of an empire that had dominated the galaxy for 8 centuries. "Open a secure communication channel to the High Command," Zexthara ordered. "Priority Alpha encryption. I need to speak with the Emperor immediately." "Sir, at this distance, even quantum entanglement communication will take several hours to establish a stable connection. Then, begin immediately. As his communications officer worked to establish the link, Admiral Zexthera found himself studying the human vessels visible on the external sensors. Their technology was unlike anything in Imperial databases, but now that he knew what to look for, he could see the subtle signs that their intelligence networks had missed. The ships moved with a fluidity that suggested gravity manipulation beyond Imperial capabilities. Their hull configurations constantly shifted, indicating materials science far advanced of anything the Empire had developed. Most unsettling of all was the complete absence of traditional energy signatures. Whatever powered these vessels operated on principles that Imperial science hadn't even theorized. "Admiral," the sensor operator called out, "I'm detecting additional human vessels throughout the system. They're not actively scanning us, but the gravitational distortions suggest hundreds of thousands of ships." "How many hundreds of thousands?" "Unknown, sir. They seem to be positioned in formations that extend beyond our sensor range. Conservative estimate would be over 2 million vessels, but that number could be significantly higher. 2 million ships in a single system. The entire Imperial Navy consisted of approximately 50 million vessels spread across 10 million worlds. If humanity could deploy 2 million ships for what they clearly considered a routine defensive action, their total military capabilities were beyond calculation." Commander Veltar approached the Admiral's chair. "Sir, perhaps we should consider the human proposal. If their technology is as advanced as they claim." "The Empire does not negotiate with primitives," Zexthera snapped. But his words lacked conviction. "With respect, Admiral, these beings are clearly not primitives. Their technological capabilities appear to exceed our own by several orders of magnitude." Before the Admiral could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The tactical display lit up with new contacts, but these weren't human vessels. Imperial reinforcements were arriving via hyperspace jump, responding to the fleet's automated distress beacon. "Identity confirmed," the communications officer announced. "Battle Group Sigma under Admiral Carthex. 60,000 additional vessels." Admiral Zexthera felt a surge of relief. Battle Group Sigma was one of the Empire's most experienced fleets, veterans of hundreds of planetary conquests. Surely the humans couldn't match the combined firepower of over 70,000 Imperial warships. The relief was short-lived. As soon as the reinforcement fleet completed their hyperspace transition, human vessels began materializing around them in the same impossible manner they had appeared around the original invasion force. Within minutes, Battle Group Sigma found itself surrounded by an even larger human fleet. "How did they know?" Commander Veltar asked. "How did they position forces to intercept our reinforcements at the exact moment of arrival?" Admiral Zexthera had no answer. The implications were staggering. Either humanity had surveillance capabilities that could predict Imperial fleet movements with perfect accuracy, or they had forces so vast that they could be everywhere simultaneously. His contemplation was interrupted by an incoming transmission. Admiral Carthex's image appeared on the communication screen, his expression grim. "Zexthera, what is the situation? My fleet is completely surrounded by unknown vessels. Our weapons systems cannot achieve target lock, and these ships don't match any design in our databases." "The situation is complicated, Admiral. These are human vessels. The species inhabiting the planet we came to conquer has revealed technological capabilities far beyond our initial assessment." "Humans?" "Our intelligence reports indicated they were primitives with barely functional spaceflight." "The intelligence reports were incorrect. We are currently in negotiations regarding the terms of our withdrawal." Carthex's expression shifted to outrage. "Withdrawal? The Imperial Navy does not retreat from primitives. Admiral, I strongly recommend you review the tactical situation before making any aggressive moves. These beings have demonstrated capabilities that—" The transmission was suddenly interrupted by another incoming signal. Dr. Sarah Chun appeared on both Admirals' screens simultaneously, despite the fact that their fleets were using entirely different communication protocols. "Admirals, I see that reinforcements have arrived. This presents us with an excellent opportunity to demonstrate the full extent of human capabilities." Dr. Chin was no longer in the simple office they had seen before. She now stood in what appeared to be a vast command center. with holographic displays showing the positions of ships throughout the solar system. But the scale was impossible. The displays seemed to show not just local space, but the entire galaxy. Admiral Carthex, welcome to the Sol System. I'm Dr. Sarah Chun, speaking on behalf of humanity. Your colleague and I were just discussing the future of the Galactic Empire. Carthex's tentacles writhed with fury. How dare you intercept Imperial communications? Our encryption is unbreakable. Dr. Chun smiled sadly. Admiral, your encryption is based on mathematical principles that we mastered several thousand years ago. But that's not important right now. What's important is that you understand the choice before you. The display behind her shifted to show a real-time view of both Imperial fleets surrounded by human vessels. But, as they watched, the human ships began to change. What had appeared to be individual vessels began connecting to each other, forming larger and larger structures. What you're seeing is the activation of humanity's unified defense protocol. Individual ships are combining into macro constructs designed for large-scale conflict resolution. The process was hypnotic and terrifying. Hundreds of human vessels flowed together like mercury, forming geometric patterns that seemed to exist in more dimensions than should be possible. The resulting structures were massive beyond comprehension, each one easily the size of a space station. Each macro construct you see is capable of disabling an entire Imperial fleet without causing permanent harm to the crews, Dr. Chen explained. We prefer non-lethal solutions whenever possible. Admiral Carthex had regained his composure, but his voice carried an edge of desperation. Impressive technology, but the Imperial Navy has faced advanced civilizations before. We have techniques for dealing with superior numbers and technology. Please proceed, Admiral. Demonstrate your techniques. The statement was clearly a challenge, and Carthex responded as any Imperial commander would. All ships, implement formation Delta 7. Concentrate firepower on the largest enemy construct. Maximum power to all weapons systems. 60,000 Imperial warships moved into attack formation with practiced precision. Their combined firepower was capable of shattering planets, and they had never encountered an enemy that could withstand their coordinated assault. Fire. The space around Earth erupted in brilliant displays of destructive energy. Plasma cannons, antimatter torpedoes, gravity bombs, and quantum disruptors all fired simultaneously. The combined barrage was so intense that it temporarily overloaded the visual sensors on both fleets' bridges. When the energy dissipated and the displays cleared, the human macro constructs remained exactly where they had been. Not a single vessel showed any sign of damage. The devastating attack had accomplished absolutely nothing. Impossible, Admiral Carthex whispered. Dr. Chen's expression remained patient. Admiral, your weapons are quite powerful by conventional standards. However, they operate within three-dimensional physics using energy patterns that we learned to counter millennia ago. One of the human macro constructs began to move, approaching Carthex's flagship with leisurely grace. As it drew closer, the Imperial sensors revealed its true scale. It was over 50 kilometers in length and seemed to be constructed from the same reality-defying materials as the smaller vessels. Your shields and armor are designed to deflect or absorb energy-based attacks, Dr. Chen continued. Our defensive systems work by redirecting incoming attacks into dimensions where they cannot affect physical matter. Your firepower is quite real, Admirals, but we've simply moved it somewhere else. The macro construct stopped less than a kilometer from Carthex's flagship. At this distance, they could see that its surface was covered in what appeared to be writing, but in a script that seemed to shift and change as they watched. What does it say? Commander Veltar asked. Dr. Chen smiled. It's a message in the ancient language of the architects, the beings who first guided humanity toward enlightenment. Translated into your language, it reads, to those who would bring war, we offer peace. To those who would cause suffering, we offer healing. To those who would destroy, we offer the chance to create. Admiral Zextera found his voice. What do you want from us? We want you to understand that there is a better way. Your empire has achieved remarkable things, advanced technology, efficient logistics, impressive organizational capabilities. But all of these achievements have been directed toward conquest and domination. The display behind Dr. Chun changed to show Imperial worlds throughout the galaxy. But instead of the military installations and mining operations that characterized most Imperial territories, these images showed what appeared to be thriving civilian populations. These are some of the worlds that will benefit most from the Empire's transformation. Populations that have been enslaved for generations will finally have the chance to determine their own destiny. Species that have been forced to serve Imperial interests will be free to pursue their own development. The images were compelling, showing diverse alien species engaging in activities that had been forbidden under Imperial rule: art, music, scientific research for its own sake rather than military applications. We're not asking you to abandon your people or your culture, admirals. We're asking you to redirect your considerable capabilities toward constructive rather than destructive purposes. Admiral Carthex had been studying the tactical displays during Dr. Chen's speech. Even if what you're saying is true, the transformation you're describing would take decades to implement. The Empire's entire structure is built around military expansion, which is why humanity is prepared to provide assistance during the transition period. We have extensive experience helping aggressive civilizations evolve into peaceful ones. The main display shifted to show other star systems where similar transformations had apparently taken place. Advanced space stations served as centers of learning and cultural exchange. Fleets of exploration vessels traveled between systems, sharing knowledge and resources. The hegemony of Veldar chose cooperation over conquest 3,000 years ago, Dr. Chen explained. They now operate one of the galaxy's most advanced research networks. The collective of Zarthon abandoned their military expansionism 1,500 years ago and have since become renowned throughout the galaxy for their artistic achievements. What happened to their militaries? Admiral Zexthera asked. They were transformed into exploration and defense forces. Instead of conquering new worlds, they now discover and protect them. Instead of subjugating other species, they help guide younger civilizations toward peaceful development. The concept was alien to everything both admirals had been taught, but the evidence was undeniable. The images showed former military vessels redesigned for scientific research, weapons facilities converted into educational centers, and armies retrained as peacekeeping forces. The process is not instantaneous, Dr. Chen admitted. It requires genuine commitment from leadership and a willingness to embrace fundamental changes in how your society operates. But the results speak for themselves. Admiral Carthex leaned forward. And if we refuse? If the Empire chooses to fight rather than submit? Dr. Chen's expression became infinitely sad. Then, humanity will be forced to implement a more direct solution. The space around both Imperial fleets suddenly filled with new contacts. But these weren't ships in any recognizable sense. They appeared to be structures of pure energy, geometric patterns that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that hurt to perceive directly. What you're seeing are reality anchors, Dr. Chen explained. They're designed to isolate specific regions of space-time from the rest of the universe. Anything within their area of effect becomes disconnected from normal physics. As the admirals watched in growing horror, one of the energy structures expanded to encompass a single Imperial destroyer. The ship didn't disappear, but it became different. Its hull began to shift and flow like liquid, while the crew inside continued their duties apparently unaware that anything had changed. The crew is unharmed, Dr. Chen assured them. They're experiencing time at a different rate than the rest of the universe, and physical laws operate differently within their isolated space-time bubble. From their perspective, everything is perfectly normal. What's the purpose? Admiral Zexthera asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Quarantine. If a species proves incapable of coexisting peacefully with the rest of the galaxy, they can be isolated until they evolve beyond their aggressive tendencies. The process typically takes several thousand years from the quarantined species' perspective, but only a few moments in normal time. The implications were staggering. Entire civilizations could be removed from the galaxy without harming a single individual. They would continue to exist, but, in isolation, unable to threaten or harm other species. How many civilizations have you quarantined? Commander Veltar asked. Fewer than we had hoped, more than we would have preferred. Currently, there are 47 species in various stages of quarantine isolation. Some have been there for only a few centuries, others for tens of thousands of years. Dr. Chen paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle over both bridge crews. The choice is yours, admirals. You can choose transformation and growth, working with humanity to build a better future for all galactic civilizations. Or you can choose isolation, spending the next few millennia in quarantine until your species evolves beyond its current aggressive tendencies. Admiral Zexthara looked at Admiral Carthex on the communication screen. Both had served the Empire faithfully for centuries, believing in its righteousness and superiority. But, faced with the reality of humanity's overwhelming technological advantage and their demonstrated willingness to use it, continued resistance seemed pointless. We need time to consider your proposal, Zexthara said finally. Of course. You have 18 standard hours remaining of your original deadline. Use that time wisely. Dr. Chen's image disappeared, leaving both admirals alone with their thoughts and their crews. Sir, Commander Veltar approached quietly. Perhaps we should attempt to contact the Emperor. His wisdom might guide us through this situation. Admiral Zexthara nodded slowly. The quantum entanglement communicator had finally established a stable connection with the Imperial capital. Within moments, they would be speaking directly with the supreme ruler of the galaxy's most powerful empire. Emperor Vaxthal's image materialized on the main display, his ancient features bearing the weight of 8 centuries of absolute power. His presence commanded immediate respect from every being on the bridge. Admiral Zexthara, your emergency transmission indicated contact with hostile forces. What is your status? Your Imperial Majesty, we have encountered a species that possesses technology far beyond our current capabilities. They have made demands regarding the future of the Empire. The Emperor's expression darkened. No species makes demands of the Empire. What is the nature of these demands? Admiral Carthex joined the communication. Majesty, they want us to release all conquered territories and transform our military into a peaceful exploration force. They claim to have the power to enforce these demands. Impossible. Show me these beings who dare threaten the Empire. Both admirals hesitated. How could they explain what they had witnessed? How could they convey the magnitude of humanity's technological superiority? Majesty, Zexthara began carefully. These humans have demonstrated capabilities that challenge our understanding of physics itself. Their vessels appear to operate using principles beyond our current scientific knowledge. Emperor Vaxthal's laugh was cold and harsh. Admirals, in my 8 centuries of rule, I have heard similar claims about dozens of species. All proved vulnerable to superior firepower and tactical brilliance. How many ships do these humans possess? Conservative estimates suggest several million vessels in this system alone, Majesty. But their individual capabilities far exceed anything in our fleet. Several million? The Emperor's expression became thoughtful. Impressive numbers, but the Empire has faced numerical disadvantages before. What is their apparent technological level? Admiral Carthex answered. They claim to have achieved faster-than-light travel over 2,000 years ago. Their ships can phase through our shields and move in patterns that suggest gravity manipulation beyond our understanding. They've also demonstrated the ability to redirect our weapons' fire into alternate dimensions. The Emperor was silent for several moments, processing this information. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of caution that neither admiral had ever heard before. These capabilities, if real, would indeed represent a significant challenge. But the Empire has survived for 8 centuries by adapting to new threats. We have overcome technological disadvantages through superior strategy and overwhelming force. Majesty, Admiral Zexthara said urgently. They've offered terms for peaceful resolution. Perhaps negotiation would be prudent. The Empire does not negotiate from a position of weakness. However, strategic withdrawal while we assess this threat would be acceptable. Return to Imperial space immediately and prepare detailed reports on everything you've observed. Before either admiral could respond, Dr. Sarah Chen's image appeared on the communication channel, somehow intercepting their supposedly secure transmission to the Emperor himself. Your Imperial Majesty, she said with a respectful bow. I am Dr. Sarah Chen, speaking on behalf of humanity. I understand you've been discussing the situation with your field commanders. Emperor Vaxthal's reaction was immediate and explosive. How dare you intercept Imperial communications? Guards. Security breach in the throne room. Majesty, I'm not physically present in your throne room. This communication is being transmitted through quantum channels that bypass your security systems entirely. Please, calm yourself. I mean no disrespect. The Emperor's eyes narrowed dangerously. You are speaking to the ruler of 10 million worlds, primitive. Show proper deference or face the consequences. Dr. Chen's expression remained patient. Your Majesty, I understand that this situation is unprecedented for your empire. You've never encountered a species capable of challenging your authority. But I assure you that humanity has no desire to humiliate or harm your people. Then, withdraw your forces and allow my admirals to return to Imperial space. I'm afraid that's not possible until we reach an agreement regarding the future of your empire. You see, Majesty, humanity has been monitoring your expansion for quite some time. We've documented the suffering you've caused, the species you've enslaved, the worlds you've strip-mined for resources. The Emperor's voice became deadly quiet. The Empire brings order to chaos, civilization to primitives. Our expansion benefits the entire galaxy. Does it, Majesty? Let me show you something. The display split, showing the Emperor's throne room on one side and a series of images on the other. The images depicted Imperial worlds, but not the gleaming cities and advanced installations that official Imperial records showed. These images revealed overcrowded slave quarters, environmental devastation from resource extraction, and populations living in desperate poverty while their world's wealth flowed to Imperial core systems. These are some of the worlds your empire has civilized, Majesty. Billions of beings living in conditions that your own core world populations would find intolerable. Emperor Vaxthal studied the images with growing anger. Imperial worlds are models of efficiency and order. These images are fabricated. They are current, real-time observations from our monitoring stations throughout your territory. Would you like to see more? The images continued, showing example after example of the suffering that Imperial expansion had caused. Entire species reduced to slave labor, ecosystems destroyed for industrial development, and cultural traditions suppressed in favor of Imperial doctrine. Your empire has indeed brought order, Majesty, but it is the order of oppression. You have created stability, but it is the stability of despair. The Emperor remained silent, but his expression revealed that he was beginning to understand the magnitude of what he faced. This human woman had detailed knowledge of conditions throughout his empire, information that should have been impossible for any external force to obtain. What do you propose? He asked finally. Transformation, Majesty. Your empire possesses remarkable organizational capabilities and advanced technology. Instead of using these gifts to conquer and subjugate, they could be used to explore and protect. Instead of enslaving other species, you could guide and assist them. And if I refuse? Dr. Chen's expression became infinitely sad. Then, humanity will be forced to ensure that your empire can no longer cause harm to innocent civilizations. The threat was clear, but it was delivered without anger or malice. This woman was simply stating a fact, as matter-of-factly as if she were describing the weather. You would destroy the empire? We would quarantine it. Your species would be isolated in a separate dimensional space where you could continue to exist and develop, but where you would be unable to harm others. It's not a punishment, Majesty, it's a preservation method. We hope that given sufficient time, your people would evolve beyond their current aggressive tendencies. Emperor Vaxthal was perhaps the most powerful individual in known space, but faced with humanity's overwhelming capabilities, he found himself in an impossible situation. Everything his empire had built was based on the assumption of technological and military superiority. That assumption had just been shattered. How long do I have to consider your proposal? Your admirals have 16 standard hours remaining. We understand that this is an enormous decision that will affect billions of lives. We don't expect you to decide lightly. The transmission ended, leaving the three most powerful figures in the imperial hierarchy alone with the most momentous decision in their civilization's history. 7 Emperor Vaxthal sat alone in his private chambers deep within the imperial palace, staring out at the sprawling cityscape of the capital world. For 8 centuries, he had ruled the galaxy's greatest empire from this very room, making decisions that affected trillions of beings across millions of worlds. Never before had he faced a choice that could end everything his civilization had built. The quantum communicator chimed softly, indicating an incoming message from Admiral Zexthara. The Emperor activated the holographic display, seeing both of his field commanders waiting for his guidance. Majesty, Admiral Zexthara began. We've completed a comprehensive analysis of the human capabilities we've observed. The tactical implications are concerning. Explain. Admiral Carthex stepped forward. Their technology operates on principles that our science cannot fully comprehend. They can materialize fleets of unlimited size anywhere in space without warning. Their defensive capabilities can neutralize any weapon in our arsenal. Most critically, they appear to have surveillance networks throughout Imperial space that we've never detected. The Emperor processed this information carefully. How extensive is their surveillance? Unknown, Majesty, but they demonstrated detailed knowledge of conditions on Imperial worlds that should be classified beyond their reach. Either their intelligence-gathering capabilities are perfect, or they've been monitoring us for an extended period. Emperor Vaxthal had built his empire through careful calculation of risk and advantage. Every conquest had been preceded by thorough intelligence gathering and strategic planning. But this situation was unlike anything in Imperial experience. What is your assessment of their claims regarding quarantine technology? Both admirals exchanged glances before Zexthara responded. We witnessed a demonstration, Majesty. They isolated one of our destroyers in what they called a reality bubble. The ship still exists, but apparently operates under different physical laws. If they can extend this technology to entire star systems, the implications hung in the air unspoken. If humanity could quarantine entire civilizations, then military resistance was not just futile, but potentially suicidal for their entire species. Majesty, Admiral Carthex said carefully. Perhaps we should consider the possibility that negotiation might serve Imperial interests better than conflict. Emperor Vaxthal's expression darkened. You suggest that the Empire should surrender to primitives? Not surrender, Majesty. Strategic adaptation. If their technology is genuinely superior to our own, then learning from them could ultimately benefit the Empire. The Emperor stood and walked to the great window that dominated one wall of his chambers. Below him stretched the capital city, home to 50 billion beings from across the galaxy. All of them depended on Imperial protection and Imperial prosperity. His decision would determine their fate as much as his own. Have either of you considered that this could be an elaborate deception? Advanced holographic technology combined with psychological warfare techniques. Admiral Zexthara shook his head. We considered that possibility, Majesty. But the physical evidence is overwhelming. Our sensors detected gravitational anomalies consistent with massive fleets. The energy signatures from their vessels don't match any known technology, but they're definitely real. Moreover, Admiral Carthex added, their ability to intercept our most secure communications suggests capabilities that would be difficult to fake. The Emperor turned back to face his commanders. Assuming their claims are accurate, what would be the practical implications of accepting their demands? Unknown, Majesty. They've indicated that they would provide guidance during the transition, but the specific details remain unclear. The transformation they're describing would fundamentally alter the Empire's structure and purpose. Before the Emperor could respond, the communication system activated without any input from the Imperial side. Dr. Sarah Chen's image appeared in the chamber, despite the fact that the room's security systems should have made such intrusion impossible. Your Majesty, I apologize for the interruption, but I thought it might be helpful to address some of your concerns directly. Emperor Vaxthal's guards immediately moved to defensive positions, but their weapons remained holstered. There was no physical threat to defend against. How did you access this chamber? My security systems are impenetrable. Your security systems are quite sophisticated by conventional standards, but they're designed to prevent physical intrusion and block traditional communication methods. Humanity's technology operates through quantum channels that exist outside normal spacetime, so conventional barriers have little effect. Dr. Chen stepped aside, revealing a view of what appeared to be the same chamber they were standing in, but from an impossible angle that suggested she was somehow observing them from multiple dimensions simultaneously. "This is unnerving," Admiral Carthex muttered. "I understand your discomfort," Dr. Chun said gently. "When a civilization first encounters technology that operates beyond their current understanding, it can be quite disconcerting. We experienced similar feelings when the architects first revealed themselves to us." The Emperor remained standing at his window, but his posture indicated he was listening carefully. "You mentioned these architects before. Who were they?" "An ancient species that transcended physical existence millions of years ago. They guided us toward enlightenment much as we're now offering guidance to you. The cycle continues throughout the galaxy as younger species mature and become capable of helping others." "Where are these architects now?" "They exist in dimensional states beyond current human understanding. We maintain contact with them, but they no longer interfere directly in galactic affairs. That responsibility now falls to us." The Emperor turned to face Dr. Chen's image. "Why should I trust the word of a species I've never encountered before?" "Because, Majesty, you don't have a choice. Whether you trust us or not, the reality of our capabilities remains unchanged. But trust can be built through experience." The holographic display expanded to show a star map of the local galactic region. Thousands of systems were marked with various symbols indicating their current status. The green markers represent species that have evolved into peaceful, exploratory civilizations with our guidance. Yellow markers indicate species currently undergoing transformation. Red markers represent aggressive civilizations like your empire that have not yet chosen their path. The Emperor studied the map carefully. The overwhelming majority of markers were green, with a substantial number of yellow ones scattered throughout the region. Only a few red markers remained, and the Empire's territory represented the largest cluster of them. What happened to the red markers that are no longer present? Some chose transformation and are now represented by green or yellow markers. Others chose quarantine and exist in isolated dimensional spaces until they evolve beyond their aggressive tendencies. Dr. Chin manipulated the display to show historical changes over time. The Emperor watched in fascination as red markers gradually converted to yellow, then green, over the course of millennia. Only a few had simply vanished, indicating species that had chosen quarantine over transformation. The process you're observing represents over 50,000 years of careful guidance and intervention. The images revealed thriving societies with advanced technology and obvious prosperity. The hegemony of Veldar that I mentioned earlier was actually quite similar to your empire in structure and temperament. Their transformation took approximately 200 years, but they now operate some of the galaxy's most advanced research facilities. Emperor Vaxthul studied these examples with growing interest. The civilizations shown in the images had clearly not been diminished by their transformation. If anything, they appeared more prosperous than ever. What happened to their military leaders? Their ruling hierarchies? They found new purposes. Military expertise proved extremely valuable for organizing exploration missions and defensive operations. Political leaders became skilled at negotiating trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Very few individuals actually lost status during the transformation. They simply redirected their talents toward constructive rather than destructive purposes. Admiral Carthex asked the question that was on everyone's mind. What assurance do we have that humanity won't simply dominate us in place of our current system? Dr. Chen's expression became earnest. An excellent question, Admiral. The answer is that dominance contradicts everything we've learned from the architects. Our role is to guide and assist, not to control. Once a civilization has successfully transformed, we withdraw to allow them complete autonomy. The display showed examples of species that had completed their transformation decades or centuries earlier. Humanity maintained no visible presence in their territories, no monitoring stations or control mechanisms. The green-marked civilizations operate independently of human oversight. We maintain diplomatic and cultural relationships with them, but they make their own decisions about governance, exploration, trade, and development. Emperor Vaxthul walked closer to the holographic display. Show me the quarantine civilizations. What is their status? Dr. Chen hesitated for a moment. Are you certain you want to see this, Majesty? Some find it disturbing. Show me. The display changed to reveal what appeared to be pocket universes, each containing a single species living in isolation from the rest of the galaxy. But these weren't prison worlds. They appeared to be thriving civilizations, completely unaware that they existed in artificial dimensional spaces. Each quarantined species continues to develop according to its own nature. Time passes at different rates within their isolated spaces, so evolution occurs much more rapidly than it would under normal circumstances. Eventually, they evolve beyond their aggressive tendencies and rejoin the galactic community. How long does this process typically take? From our perspective, usually between 50 and 100 years. From their perspective, it can be thousands of years. But the process isn't punitive, it's educational. They have the opportunity to learn through experience why cooperation serves them better than conquest. The Emperor studied the quarantined civilizations for several long moments. They appeared to be functioning normally, with no indication that they were aware of their isolation. What determines whether a species is offered transformation or immediately quarantined? Several factors, Dr. Chen replied. The level of suffering they've caused, their willingness to consider alternatives, the sophistication of their civilization, and, most importantly, whether they show any capacity for moral growth. She paused and looked directly at the Emperor. Your empire has caused significant suffering, Majesty, but it has also achieved remarkable technological and organizational advances. More importantly, you're demonstrating the wisdom to consider alternatives rather than simply choosing feudal resistance. Admiral Zexthara spoke up. What would be the first steps if we accepted your proposal? Immediate cessation of military expansion and the beginning of negotiations for the release of conquered territories. Humanity would provide technical advisors to help establish new governmental structures that serve all species fairly rather than privileging the imperial hierarchy. And our people would accept this? Dr. Chen smiled. Admiral, most of your people have never directly benefited from imperial expansion. The wealth and resources extracted from conquered worlds primarily serve the ruling elite. A transformed empire would actually provide better living conditions for the majority of your population. The Emperor found this claim skeptical. The empire provides security and stability for 50 billion beings on the core worlds alone. Security from whom, Majesty? The primary threats to your core worlds come from rebellions in conquered territories. Remove the conquest system, and you remove most of the security threats. Stability can be maintained through cooperation rather than oppression. The holographic display changed to show economic analyses of imperial core worlds. The data suggested that the majority of resources spent on military expansion could be redirected toward infrastructure, education, and quality of life improvements. Furthermore, Dr. Chen continued, a transformed empire would have access to technologies and knowledge that would dramatically improve living standards for everyone. Cooperation with other advanced civilizations provides benefits that conquest never could. Emperor Vaxthul realized that he was beginning to seriously consider the proposal. The rational part of his mind could see the logic in humanity's arguments. But 8 centuries of absolute power made it difficult to contemplate voluntarily reducing his authority. What would happen to me personally? To my position, you would remain the leader of your core territories and your own species. The transformation would actually expand your influence, because instead of ruling through fear and military might, you would lead through wisdom and cooperation. Other species would seek your guidance because they valued it, not because they were forced to accept it. The concept was alien to everything the Emperor had been taught about leadership, but he could see the appeal. Ruling beings who chose to follow would indeed be more satisfying than controlling those who submitted only through fear. How much time do I have to make this decision? 14 hours and 37 minutes, Majesty. The Emperor looked at his 2 admirals, both of whom had served him faithfully for decades. What are your recommendations? Admiral Zexthara answered first. Majesty, from a purely tactical standpoint, continued resistance appears futile. Their technological superiority is overwhelming, and they've demonstrated both the capability and willingness to enforce their demands. Admiral Carthex nodded in agreement. Moreover, the transformation they're proposing doesn't appear to be significantly disadvantageous to our core interests. We would retain our territories and our people, but redirect our efforts toward more sustainable purposes. And what of our warrior traditions? Our cultural pride and military excellence? Dr. Chin responded to this concern. Military excellence remains valuable, Majesty. Exploration missions encounter unknown dangers that require strategic thinking and tactical skill. Defensive operations demand the same qualities that made your empire successful in conquest. The skills remain valuable. They're simply applied to different purposes. The display showed examples of former Imperial military units that had been retrained for exploration duties. They appeared to have maintained their esprit de corps and sense of purpose, but now served to discover new worlds rather than conquer inhabited ones. Emperor Vaxthul walked to his desk and activated his personal communication system. Summon the High Council. Inform them that we face a situation requiring immediate consultation. Should I inform them of the nature of the situation? His aide asked. Tell them that the Empire's future is being decided, and their council is required. As he waited for the High Council to assemble, the Emperor continued studying the information that Dr. Chun had provided. The more he learned about the transformation process, the more reasonable it appeared. But reasonable didn't necessarily mean acceptable to the millions of Imperial officials whose positions depended on the current system. Dr. Chun, what resistance should I expect from my own hierarchy? Many Imperial officials have devoted their entire careers to the current system. Most will find new roles that utilize their existing skills and experience. Some may initially resist the changes, but when they see the benefits of transformation, resistance typically fades quickly. And those who refuse to adapt, they will be given the opportunity to relocate to territories that choose to maintain traditional imperial governance. Not every world under your current control will choose transformation. Some may prefer to maintain their existing relationships with imperial authority. This was a crucial point that the Emperor hadn't considered. The transformation didn't necessarily require every imperial territory to change simultaneously. You mean some worlds could choose to remain as they are? Within their own territories, yes. But they would no longer have the ability to expand militarily or exploit other species. Think of it as allowing your empire to maintain its internal structure while changing how it interacts with the rest of the galaxy. The concept made the transformation much more palatable. If core imperial worlds could maintain their existing governmental structures while simply ending their aggressive expansion, the changes would be far less disruptive than he had initially imagined. The High Council began arriving in the chamber, their expressions revealing confusion about the unprecedented emergency session. As the Emperor looked at these beings who had helped him rule the galaxy for centuries, he realized that the next few hours would determine not just the fate of their empire, but the future of billions of lives throughout known space. Counselors, he began, we face a decision that will define our civilization's legacy for millennia to come. Over the next several hours, Emperor Vaxthul presented everything they had learned about humanity's capabilities and demands. The initial reactions from the High Council ranged from disbelief to outrage to resignation. But as the evidence mounted and the implications became clear, a consensus began to emerge. The question before us is simple, the Emperor finally said. Do we choose transformation and growth, or do we choose isolation and stagnation? High Counselor Mexvar, the eldest member of the council, spoke for the group. Majesty, in 8 centuries of service to the Empire, I have never encountered a situation where our choices were so limited. But perhaps that limitation is itself a form of guidance. Explain. For too long, we have had the luxury of imposing our will on others through superior force. We have never been required to consider whether our actions were wise, only whether they were possible. Perhaps being forced to confront the consequences of our choices will ultimately strengthen us. The other counselors murmured agreement. Even the most militaristic among them could see that continued resistance would accomplish nothing except their own destruction. Emperor Vaxthul turned back to Dr. Chen's image. If I agree to your proposal, what guarantees do I have that humanity will honor its commitments? No guarantees except our history, Majesty. Every species that has chosen transformation has prospered under our guidance. We have never broken faith with those who trusted us. The Emperor looked around the council chamber at the beings who had helped him build and maintain the greatest empire in galactic history. Then, he looked out the window at the capital city that represented the culmination of centuries of imperial achievement. Dr. Chun, on behalf of the Galactic Empire, I accept your proposal for transformation. The words echoed in the chamber like the closing of one age and the beginning of another. Your Majesty has made a wise choice, Dr. Chun replied, and, for the first time, her expression showed genuine relief. Humanity is honored to assist your species in this transformation. What happens now? Now we begin the careful work of reshaping your empire into something that serves all of its inhabitants rather than just its rulers. It will take time, patience, and goodwill from all parties, but the end result will be a civilization that your descendants will thank you for creating. Emperor Vaxthul realized that history would remember this moment as either his greatest triumph or his most catastrophic failure. But, looking at the evidence of what other species had achieved through transformation, he found himself genuinely hopeful for the first time in decades. The age of galactic conquest was ending, but perhaps something better was about to begin. 6 months later, former Admiral Zexthara stood on the observation deck of the exploration vessel New Horizons, watching as his crew prepared to investigate a previously unknown star system. The ship was a marvel of human and imperial engineering combined, capable of traveling distances that would have taken years in the old imperial warships. Captain, his science officer called out, we're detecting signs of primitive civilization on the third planet. Early industrial development, radio communications, but no evidence of spaceflight. Captain Zexthara smiled. In the old empire, such a discovery would have meant conquest and exploitation. Now it meant the opportunity to make first contact with a species that might one day join the growing community of galactic civilizations. Begin standard observation protocols, he ordered, and prepare a message to transmit to the Guidance Council. We may have found another species ready to take their first steps toward the stars. Behind them, Earth grew smaller in the view screen, but its influence continued to spread throughout the galaxy as more and more species chose cooperation over conquest, exploration over exploitation, and wisdom over war. The galaxy was becoming a very different place, and for the first time in galactic history, it was becoming a better one.